Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Jonny Lipsham.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show on this 17th of January 2021. We are racing through the year already. It's crazy. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. It's been a busy week for me, and been actually a busy weekend. I have pretty much hardly had any minutes to stop and think about anything, so lots going on. But that said, we have to thank the great Mr. Just Bob for the intro music. If he's here, he may well recognize the guitar playing. But yeah, hi everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. We've got a slightly different show than we have done normally. Normally we just talk, and normally I answer your questions, and I'm still going to do that. But I have said for a wee while that I wanted to start doing more subject-based shows, and basically, talk about things that you want to talk about rather than just things that I'm interested in, or just doing questions. Questions is fine, and you guys ask some of the best questions, so I appreciate that very much. I'm just trying to adjust my seat. Hang on. I appreciate that very much, and I'm still going to be doing that. That's still going to be a big part of the show, but I want to kind of explore subjects that you guys are interested in. So that's what we're going to do. And Bob says he recognized it. Yes, you should. Thank you very much for sending me those tracks, and I'm going to explain all in just a minute, folks. But first of all, we're going to go and see who's first in the door. Hang on a minute, I went flying past something. There we go. Marcos was first in the room. Hello, Marcos. How are you doing? I was talking to you very briefly earlier this evening. And Bob, of course, is here. And Thomas over in the Philippines is here as well. And who else do we have? Lollipop is in here as well. She's sneaking in by the back door. Best way to come in unnoticed. You guys were chatting for quite a while pre-show, which is awesome. I like it when you guys chat pre-show and I just basically come in and I start setting up for the show, and you guys are chatting away. So that's also very cool. And Alan is here over in Glasgow, also known as Photography Light and Magic. He's here. And Alts Media, the sponsor for Home Studio Trainer that everybody knows and loves, is here. And Kyle Trajuziak is here. And I'm scrolling down. Ken Moss, my other moderator, is here as well. John Lake is here. And who else do we have? Jeff Wood is here, down in Newcastle. Newcastle upon Tyne, that's not very far away from Edinburgh. It's only a matter of a couple of hours away, which is awesome. I love Newcastle. I've played a lot of gigs in Newcastle, know it pretty well. It's a great fun town to be in. Let's see who else is here. It's always good to see fellow Brits here as well, actually. I'll tell you that much. And fellow Scots as well, having Alan in here. Always makes for a good show. And you guys are talking about the Studio One meetups, which I'm also going to talk about in just a minute as well. A little bit like Sgt. Pepper. Yeah, it kind of was. Okay, and we're down at the bottom, and Mika is here as well. Mika's last in the door. No, not quite. Billy Morgan's just appeared. Did you get the lyrics to something? Okay, cool. Okay, you guys are talking. Cool. Okay, so tonight's show, we're going to take a look at some guitar tracks and what I personally do with guitar tracks when I get them, and how I get them to sit in the mix. So this would be any particular style of music. I have a fairly similar routine, that varies very little whether it's jazz or folk or rock. Although if it's rock and it's heavier than average, then obviously I'm gonna treat those a little bit differently. But I will apply the same kind of principles, but I will maybe just be a little bit more heavy-handed, a little bit more aggressive with them. and maybe use less compression because, heavier music, the guitars tend to already be distorted, and distortion is a form of compression anyway. So I find that distorted guitars don't need very much, if any, maybe just a little bit of containing compression, and that's about it. Just to tame some of the transients a little bit. And that's usually as far as I go. A bit of compression, bit of EQ. But I do something which is actually a pretty commonplace technique, which is called Complementary EQ. And I do that a lot. The other thing that I employ is mixing in mono. And the reason why I mix in mono is because by mixing in mono, it forces me to separate the different elements of the mix out just by using EQ and compression alone. And then when I flip everything out to stereo, you should end up with a much wider, much bigger, much broader sound. That's been my experience for most of the time that I've been doing it. I was introduced to mixing in mono fairly late on in my mixing life, maybe after I'd been mixing for, 10 years or so. But the guy who introduced me to it was absolutely, he preached it pretty hard. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to start doing it and just kind of see where it takes me. And if I kind of decide that it's not something I want to do, then I won't do it. I'll just, hey, it's a tool to put in the toolkit. And if I ever decide to get it back out again, then I will. But I found more and more mixing in mono is actually really helpful. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing some of that. And just bear in mind, everybody, and David Anthony is here as well. Hello, David. How are you? Down in, whereabouts are you, David? You're in Australia. I have a lot of family in Australia as well, mostly around Melbourne and Victoria, and I have some relatives in Sydney as well. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a follower of Aussie Rules football. Don't know a lot about it, but enjoy watching it when I see it. And obviously cricket, I am very passionate about. Have been a passionate cricket, not just a cricket fan, but played to quite a high standard. I played to county level when I was in my teens and my early 20s, and then injury killed that. Yes, he is, Thomas. But that's all I'm going to say about him. All right, so let's get into this. And this demonstration will probably not take very long because we basically just got guitar, we got some bass, we got some Fender Rhodes, and we got some drums, and that is it. So it's a small little thing, and the thing that I want to focus on really is what I do with guitars. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what Bob provided me, because these are Bob's guitar tracks. Yeah, well, that's what the internet is for, Martin. Thankfully. However, I have seen my Australian relatives. The last time I saw them was in early 2019 when they came back here to Scotland. They are expats. They're not Australian born. They are Scotland born. But their kids are Australian born. are all Australian native. But my direct relatives are Scottish. So they came back 2019, so early 2019. It's nearly 2 years ago now, and that's the last time I've seen them, unfortunately. But a tour would be more fun, yes it would, but it would also be heinously expensive and probably therefore quite prohibitive. So, alright, let's get into this, and we'll talk about Bob's awesome guitar tracks that he sent me. That's not the button I wanted to press. That's not the button I wanted to press at all. There we go. Let's go over to Studio One. Alright, so here we are. We're in Studio One. And essentially, what Bob sent me was some guitar tracks. And then I basically thought, I could just do this basically entirely just about guitar tracks. But I thought, let's give them some context, because context is always king. And hey, Mike, it's no problem. You and I talked offline about that, so that is all cool. But I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much, Mike, for coming and for being one of my mods. My mods are awesome. They do a great job of making sure that the chat stays nice, clean, and tidy, and links get posted and that kind of stuff. All right, so here we are. So we've got some very different guitar parts. Well, they're playing the same thing fundamentally, but they are played on different guitars. Like this top one here is a Fender, and then this one is a Firefly semi-hollow body with the bridge pickup, and then this one is a Gibson Les Paul with the neck pickup, and then this one is a Schecter. I like Schecter guitars, actually. They're quite nice. Platinum Series, active pickups, middle position. So we got 4 very unique and different sounding guitars, and Bob tells me that they were plugged direct into his interface, and pretty much that is all she wrote. That's it, which is what I wanted for the purposes of this demonstration. And I'm going to show you basically how I go about doing things. Now, Bob has given me a head start. And the reason why I say that is because he's given me different guitars. So each guitar has its own tone and its own sound, and he selected different pickups as well for different variations. So already we have a distinct advantage. So when we flip this into mono, they are already going to sound pretty clear, distinct, and separate, which is great. But you're not always going to get this. So the principles I'm going to teach you, I say teach, I mean teach in the loosest sense, because you guys probably already know this. Those of you that do already know this, you can go and make coffee and whatever, or you can be entertained by the way I do it. But yeah, so what I'm going to show you is how I go about EQing and compressing these guitars. And I don't think they need a whole lot of either, to be honest, because they already sound pretty great, as you heard at the intro. So let's take a look at these. I've got the bus soloed up, so let's listen to these 4 together, and then we will listen to a little bit of each one. Cool. So already there are some interesting little things going on with each one of these guitars, other than each one of them sounds very distinct and different, and that was in mono, and we could hear each guitar, and it didn't sound like they were fighting each other that much. So this should be fairly straightforward, what we're doing here. So let's take the solos off the bus, and then what we'll do is we'll solo each one up. So we'll start with the Fender one at the top. Hey, a little fumble there. But that's okay. Fumbles are what makes each one of these distinct and different. All right, and then we'll get the next one. All right, and we'll get the last one. Yeah, the guitar parts are quiet. You're absolutely right. But when we put everything else in together, because I kind of cheated a little bit. And I went ahead, and as you can see, I balanced all of these. But I can zero all of these out. Control click, not shift click, you idiot. There we go. Let's balance all of those up, and let's go back to... Alright, and then this is the second one. And these tracks are also recorded quite conservatively, which is a good thing. Okay, and then the last one. Alright, so there we go. So now we've heard all 4 guitars, and we've heard what they sound like in context as well. So already we have quite a lot of separation going on, just by the fact that they're all different guitars, and they all have slight variations in tuning. That's the other thing that you can notice. They all have slight variations and differences in tuning. Okay, I forgot to turn off my flipping notifications because I was late getting in here. Hang on just a minute. And let's take care of that. Let's go to settings. Notifications, turn those. Oh, not that one. Oh, hang on, I can't get that back. What the hell have I just done? Notifications, turn those off. Okay, I've gone into night mode somehow and I can't turn the bloody thing off. How do you turn that off? Display. Okay, the display has gone weird. I don't know why. I appear to have this night mode on, which I've switched on by mistake, and I don't know how to turn the damn thing off. I've turned it off, but it still doesn't appear to make any difference. Nightlight settings. How do you turn it off? How do you turn this damn thing off, and who invented this infernal thing? Does anyone know how to turn this thing off? Because I don't know how to turn it. I mean, I thought I turned it off, and I thought by turning it off, it would go back to normal, but it doesn't look like it's doing that. I suppose I could just turn that down to 0. That would do it. All right, I think we've restored normality. Yes, I think you're right, Lollipop. I think you're right. All right, so we are in mono, and we've heard all the guitar parts, and I do have them all panned out, left and right, but because we're in mono mode, we're not going to notice that. So the first thing I like to do, and this is just me, is I'm going to go and grab my favorite Personas EQ, LMNOP. Sorry, slightly flustered by that. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and put the EQ on the bus. And I'm going to give this a little bit of a high-pass filter. That should probably be enough, but we'll have a listen. We'll have a listen to just guitars just now. All right, let's put that in context. All right, so we scooped out some low end there. And that's kind of where I like to start, is just kind of do some basic stuff on here, and I'll maybe give this a little bit of a shelf as well, not a whole lot. There we go. That will do that. So that's kind of where I like to start. I like to start on the bus end of things. Those of you that may have seen my mixing series that I did, must be about nearly 3 years ago now, where I mixed my song Paper Deity, and I went right all the way through from start to finish. If you've not seen that series, then this should give you an idea of kind of what I do on a much larger scale mixes. I kind of start with buses. Now, I would also ordinarily start with a little bit on the master bus as well. So maybe take out the extreme lows that we just don't need at all. I'm kind of guessing I'm kind of earballing that a little bit. And then I'll kind of leave it at that in general. And then I will go and do some specific EQ on these 4 guitars. And I'll show you what I mean by complementary EQ. So if I highlight these guitars and get an EQ on each of them, so they all populate, there we go. And then we'll close that up. And we'll just select the first. So this is what I mean by complementary EQ. So let's say on this one, we still have the high pass filter just to filter out some of those extreme lows anyway. And then I maybe scoop out a little bit of 420-ish, which I could hear in this little Fender guitar dealio over here. And let's say that we're okay with that. Well, what I would then do is I go over to the next guitar and maybe not high pass quite so much. And then maybe instead of cutting this particular 420-ish, I would maybe give it a little bit of a boost. So this is what I mean by complementary. Now, I'm being arbitrary with numbers here. I haven't actually listened to these. I'm not doing this and listening at the same time, if you see what I mean. But this is what we kind of mean by complementary EQ. You boost on one and cut on the other and vice versa. So that's kind of what I'm going to do across the board here for these. So I'm going to control-click that to zero that one out. And we're going to have a listen to these. And this is only like a little 7-bar thing. And we're going to listen to this quite a lot. So you guys are probably going to get fed up with this by the end of it. But this is kind of what I do and how I like to do it, okay? And the other thing I should say is that I like to mix in context. That means I don't do a lot of soloing. Soloing is something I do rarely. If I want to pinpoint something out specifically on a specific channel, then yes, maybe I'll hit the solo button. For the most part, no, I don't hit the solo button. I like to do it as if I'm mixing a band, personally. And then it's like, for me, it's like an aural jigsaw puzzle, making sure everything fits. And that's why complementary EQ is a big thing for me. And it's all done in mono. And then when we get later down the line and I'm happy with my EQs and I'm happy that I've got these guitars separated out, then we'll slap it out to stereo and then we will have some fun with some reverbs and delays and any amp sims and stuff like that we might want to add. But for the most part, I'm just treating this as if this is just a very bare bones basic pop or pop rock orientated rhythm section, and we've got clean guitars. And maybe we'd have some distorted guitars layered on top of these rhythm parts. So we're going to keep these nice and clean for now. All right, let's press on. Yeah, it's going to get boring, guys. Trying to do this as fast as I can. Alright, I'm sure you guys have all totally had enough of that. So that was a quick and dirty little bit of EQ there. Just a little bit of scooping out. And because I much prefer to scoop first, and then I will listen through afterwards and see if there's anything that needs enhanced. So I'm kind of listening in different stages. The first time I'm listening and I'm EQing, I'm listening for what needs to be cut. And then the next time through, I will go and listen to what I think needs boosted on each one of these, bearing in mind that I'm wanting to fit these guitars inside, you know, kind of inside of each other like jigsaw pieces. Are you in mono mode? Yes, it is. If you look over here, look, mono, and we've got the red mono light up here as well. So we are definitely in mono mode, and that's deliberate. Because I want to do all of this in mono right now. Now, right now, as it stands, if I just solo up the guitar bass, sounds pretty good. We can hear each one of those guitars. There's still some low end going on one of these little guys. This guy. Is it this one? That's this one. Alrighty. So, yeah, there was a little bit of extra low end that I hadn't really dealt with because I'm kind of hurrying through this because I want to get to your questions and we're already like halfway through the show. Okay, so yes, I am quite deliberately mixing in mono. And as John Lake says, scoop first, shoot later. Yes, absolutely. But for right now, we're probably just going to scoop, to be honest, because I don't want to drag this out for too terribly much longer. I basically just want to give you guys... and it was just Bob really that asked the question. He wanted to see how I treat guitars. What do I do? Now we could go and play with some amp sims for sure, and get some particularly amp sounding tracks. Those tracks need to be aligned. The tuning and timing is causing phase cancellations all over the place. Yeah, they're not. As I said to you right at the start. You know, there are some timing issues in these recorded tracks. Yes, there are. There's no doubt about that. And that's okay. This is how it might happen. This is what you might get, folks. For those of us that don't work in multi-million-dollar studios and have access to the cream of the cream of session musicians, this is what you might be, this is what you might end up with. Now, I'm not saying that Just Bob is not a good guitar player. I'm not saying that at all. And I'm not saying that his guitars aren't great, because I'm not saying that either. So, this is, you know, I'm not attacking Bob or his guitar playing whatsoever. But what I am saying is that, you know, if you don't have access to the highest caliber guitar players that are making, you know, thousands of dollars per session, and you don't have access to LA2As and 1176s and Neve consoles or SSL consoles or anything like that, then this is what you deal with. And this is how, personally, I deal with it. Now, some of the timing is a little askew. I quite agree. But that's kind of not really the point of the show. The point of this is how you deal with realism. and not kind of cream of the crop LA session musicians. This, and to be honest, this really isn't about how well this was particularly performed. Now, performance is always the best place to start, because you can deal with an abundance of EQ and compression issues if all the tracks are beautifully and wonderfully and gloriously performed. But you're not always going to get that. Particularly if you are working remotely, as we all are in these coronavirus times. I don't have just Bob being able to walk into my studio and spend 3 hours here perfecting the amp tone or perfecting how each guitar sounds with particular brands of strings, flat wounds versus round wounds, or particular gauges of strings, or particular pair of microphones that we use on the amps, whatever. You're not always going to get that, and that's the point of this. So, auto-align would do that, for sure. Auto-align would time-align these. I don't have auto-align, so I cannot do that. That's just the way it is. That's just what I have to deal with right now. So, accept that that's the way it is. Sorry, had to take a little pause to grab a mug of tea. All right, so we've done a little bit of scooping, and we've done a little bit of scooping on the bus and the main bus as well. Let's flip this out to stereo and see what this sounds like. All right, so there we go. It doesn't sound too terribly bad, actually. But like I said, we've only kind of barely got started, and we're 37 minutes into the show. So basically, all I wanted to do was just give you a taste of how I go about doing things with EQ on some pretty raw and bare bones guitar parts. And as Bobby quite correctly points out, we all mix differently. We all have different tools that we use. And, we all have our different approaches to doing things. Now, like I said, I don't have auto-align. If I had auto-align, yeah, too right, I would time-align all of these. If you want to come to Sunday Night Live and experience a 5-hour mixing show, then yes, fair enough. I would take the time to spend time aligning these, and maybe if I had Melodyne Editor or Melodyne Assistant or something like that, I could probably tune these guitars as well, and get them sounding a little bit more in tune with each other. Okay, I've had enough of that. Had quite enough of that, thank you. Okay, moving swiftly on. We're going to move on to your questions now. So if you guys have got any questions about Studio One in particular, then let's get to those. Unfortunately, a certain somebody is just choosing to dominate and be critical. And I've frankly had enough of that. And this is my show. And, I take criticism. Criticism is absolutely fine. And yes, there are lots of other tools I could use other than just an EQ and a compressor. For sure. But, I don't have a lot of tools in my box. Well, actually, I do. I do have a fair number of tools, but I'm also limited to a certain amount of time for this show. Now, if you guys are interested and you would like me to do a much longer show where we go into a little bit more depth and a little bit more detail on how I mix, then we can certainly do that. But you guys need to tell me that that's what you want. If that's something you're interested in, leave your comments. Leave your comments either in the chat here, or you can leave your comments after the show when this show becomes a video, or you can email me, johnny@johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk. And if you're interested in that, then sure, we can certainly we can do that. But the only way I can do that here, because I start my show at midnight UK time, the only way I can make that happen so that we can have maybe a 2-hour show is by starting an hour earlier, which means it's going to be 5 p.m. Central Time. Which eats into your Sundays a little bit, folks. But, you know, if you want me to do that, then we can certainly do that. Let's see. Bobby says... Ashley Marcus says Linux version for Studio One. It's not something that is being looked at, as far as I'm aware. And even if I was aware, I couldn't tell you anyway, because I can't tell you about any future developments of Studio One. But if you would like a Linux version of Studio One, then certainly go and make a feature request over at answers.presonus.com. And certainly you can then also campaign for it. And if you know people that would like a Linux version of Studio One, then get them to vote your feature request up. And, you know, if it is a popular thing, then it may well happen. You never know. I have put feature requests in, and I've seen them added to Studio One. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. Let's see. Martin says, a good idea to remember to set up the spectrum analyzer in Studio One and watch the frequencies in real time while adjusting the EQ. Yeah, I don't really use spectrum analyzers, because then that means I'm mixing with these rather than these. Now, when you're first starting out in mixing, you kind of do use these a little bit more than these, because you're learning where frequencies are. But I think it's far more important to not look at spectrum analyzers and oscilloscopes and stuff like that. Rather, use your ears. Listen to what different things sound like. Learn to identify by ear, you know, hey, there's some muddy frequencies going on in this guitar. Aha, there's some mud over here around about 120. That's fine. Let's go find that and scoop that out by a couple of dB. And that usually, by and largely, will take care of it. But you need to learn to hear it. And the only way you learn to hear it is by doing a lot of mixing with your ears and training your ears to hear those things. And for years, I never looked at things like this phase meter or the spectrum analyzer, or you know, when I'm working in an EQ, I'm not looking at what the graph is doing and going, oh, I need to cut there to kind of like balance things out a little bit in the graph. I'm using my ears. And then, you know, I allow my eyes to confirm what I am hearing. Now, it might be that sometimes I'm not quite hearing something, or I can't quite pinpoint something, in which case that's where graphs are handy, which is why we spend a lot of time designing them, so you have all of these views, 3rd octave, 12th octave, a waterfall, and an FFT curve. You know, we've got all of those views in here to help you, and to help, you know, to help me. But they're only really, in my opinion, things like these graphs are really there to only confirm what your eyes, you know, confirm with your eyes what your ears are already hearing. So you can see a confirmation with your eyes, and then when you're pulling it out, you hear it and you see it on the screen as well, and you confirm, yes, I've got rid of that, or yes, I have improved that. For me, that's kind of the way I use things like graphs and stuff like that. Now, Bobby asked, Can you play the guitars without the plugins and then turn them on? Sure, we can certainly do that. So let's go turn off everything. And we'll play just the guitars. All right. Okay, a little bit of distortion in this last one here. Which I've only just kind of noticed. But it's definitely there. But yeah, there you go. So that's with them off. Let's turn everything back on. All right, and then in context. All right, there we go. So that's kind of where we're at with this right now. We haven't really done anything else. We haven't really done any compression or anything else. We've just done a little taste of EQ on each of them. And I think, you know, already they've kind of sweetened up a little bit. And we got rid of some of the excessive low end that was there, some of the low mids that was there. You know, it's important that you get rid of that kind of stuff because it's going to get in the way of other sounds like the Fender Rhodes or the bass as well. Now, you have to remember also with the Fender Rhodes in particular, just as a kind of bonus tip for those of you that don't know anything about the Fender Rhodes, the Fender Rhodes electric piano has a build-up round about 400. And it's just the way the instrument is designed. So it's a little bit of a design flaw with the instrument. So check this out. So you can see it in this area here. So pretty much, I mean, we've not done any high-pass filtering or anything like that. So we could certainly do that. And I would probably high-pass quite a way up. And then go for around about that 400 area. Let's kind of have a little look for it. And it is kind of round about there. So now that I've kind of found it, we can probably just scoop out a couple of dB of that. I boosted a little bit of 2K as well to get a little bit of the attack and the percussiveness into the instrument as well. All right, so there you go. That's kind of a little bit of a bonus thing there for you with the Fender Rhodes. But let's see, cloning the guitars and making layers in the aspect range with minus layers. What do you think about this idea? Yeah, cloning is not a good idea. And I will tell you why. And this is why Bob's examples tracks that he sent me are perfect. Because they are 4 separate takes of the same thing. Now, if you clone something, you make a copy of it. And then you're going to end up with a whole bunch of, and Mika was actually alluding to this earlier, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of phase cancellations because none of the transients are going to line up. Or rather, they're going to line up too much, I should say. When you clone something, the transients are exactly aligned too precisely. And so it's not a good idea. All you end up doing is just making the sound bigger, or rather just louder, not really bigger. You end up making the sound louder because you're just adding to the sound by copying it. And it then doesn't matter whether you pan it left or right. You're not going to hear whether it's panned left or right. And you're not going to hear the difference between the left guitar and the right guitar, which is why it is always a much better idea to play it again. Even if you want to do like 5 rhythm guitar parts and have 1 up the middle, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, play it 5 times. Try and play as close to the other parts as you can, but allow for those little nuances and little variations, because that's what makes the sound nice and wide, nice and full, and gives you a nice stereo image of your guitars. And that's why I recommend doing that rather than cloning. Because the thing with cloning is you have to try and fake that kind of misalignment by doing little bits of delay, track delay here or there. You have to delay the events maybe 15 milliseconds here, 15 milliseconds there. The problem with doing that, cloning the track and then doing all sorts of delay trickery, is that you can end up with even more phase cancellation because the transients are no longer, they are way out of alignment, or they are only just out of alignment. And just out of alignment means you can end up with cancellations, which you don't really want. So cloning's not a good idea. I don't recommend it. But interesting point, nonetheless. Just Bob says, if you want, open it up for download so we can hear how others would mix it. Yeah, we could certainly do that. I can certainly package these up and put a Dropbox link out there. I can certainly do that after the fact. Let's see. Let's go back up. Martin says, TDR Nova Dynamic EQ. It also save a lot of time as one could do scooping and threshold adjustments at the same time. Yeah, Dynamic EQ. I actually, in this case, would not use a Dynamic EQ. I don't think it needs it. I think, these are actually fairly straight, simple, clean rhythm guitar parts. I don't think you need a Dynamic EQ. In this case, you just need some bare bones basic EQing. But yeah, in some other instances, it would be a good thing. And Tim Talks Audio is here. I missed him coming in. Sorry about that, buddy. But I'm glad you're here. Welcome. Let's go further down and see what else. Music to Motion says, I think you're giving a good example of working with realized stems. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Alps is thanking Bob for the tracks. Cool. Let's see. Kyle says, I had a vocal track done in a bad room, or maybe bitrate conversion issues. Had multiple notch filters to try and tame the trash. Was all over the spectrum. Yeah, I've done that with, actually I've done that more with voiceover tracks than I have with anything else. Where, I might have 2 or 3 EQs, with like 15 bands of notch filters to try and deal with the different things that were going on. Trying to fix things in the mix like that is not the best way. The best way is try and get it right at the source. My good friend and colleague, Joe Gilder, says that all the time. And he's right. Get it right at the source. Try and capture the best sounds that you possibly can. Take the time there. because you will save time when it comes to mix time. And it means that you'll need to do a lot less to the tracks because they're already good. Now, you know, these guitar tracks are good. They have variations in tuning, which is a real life thing. That can happen. You can certainly get guitars that have variations of tuning. Maybe, you know, the G string on one guitar is slightly flatter or sharper. We all know what sharting is. Sharper than the G string on another guitar that you have in your mix. You got to be able to deal with those. And, you know, you got to be able to deal with those creatively. Now, in this case, what I might have done, if I only had like 2 guitars instead of 4, what I might have done is on the one that has the more tuning problems, I might have used a chorus plugin to kind of cover the tuning issues a little bit. I might have done that. But yeah, I mean, those are things that are just baked into the track. There's nothing you can do about them unless you've got some kind of polyphonic tuning software like Melodyne Assistant or Melodyne Editor, and that can do that. You can just totally run a guitar track through those, clean up all those tuning issues, job done. Now, one of the things that Mika was talking about was he was talking about, you know, phase cancellation because of sloppy playing, where there are mistakes in the tracks. Where maybe one downstroke was snatched, whereas on the next track it isn't, or it's maybe played a little lazily on one track, but snatched on another. Now, for the most part, 90% of the time, I don't worry about that. And here's why. It's because human beings have variations. Because we are human, we're not robots, we're not machines. And I don't like machine music. Well, actually, that's not technically true, because actually 2 of my really good friends, Arne Kaiser and Gregor Bayer, are both electronic music specialists, and I love their music. But here's the thing. I don't like acoustic instruments being forced into being super squeaky clean and perfect. Don't like it. I like a little bit of imperfection. I like a little bit of roundness here and there. I like the occasional error to creep into the music. That's okay. That's fine. Now, if you have a lot of tracks where they are laden with basic errors, where there are mistakes that can't really be covered, or there's a wrong chord being played. Now, granted, with some pitch correction software, you could go, okay, that chord was meant to be a G, and for some reason the guitar player misread the chord change and played an A chord. You could just chop that and pitch shift it to the correct chord, and then blend it, and it's fine. That might be one of my kids coming down the stairs, which is not great when it's nearly 1 a.m. So you can do that with modern technology these days. But that's not to say that we should. And that's not what I believe in. Now, obviously, with this show, unfortunately, I've only been able to give you a little bit of a taste of what I would do. You know, there are only eight tracks in this mix. It's going to take maybe another 40 minutes tops, probably, to sort out and get it sounding wonderful. I didn't want to take up 40 minutes of the whole show with that. I wanted to give you a flavor. So I hope that you've got a little bit of a flavor of what I do when I'm separating out these guitars. I had a little help from Bob. Bob picked 4 different guitars and different pickup configurations on his guitar. That gave me a head start. Now, had he used the same guitar 4 times with the same pickup selector, those 4 times, this would have been a little bit less straightforward because I would have been doing a lot more complementary EQ for a start to try and separate these guitars out. And I have done that. I have had situations where the same guy has played the same guitar 4 different times through the same amp with the same mics, and there's no variation in the captures, and that's what I have to do. I have to use complementary EQ to get these guys to separate. What helped us was when we listened to these in mono, we could hear all 4 guitars distinctly because each one had its own kind of EQ already baked into the track because they're different necks. There's different strings on the guitars. There's different pickup positions, and each guitar is made out of a slightly different wood. All of those things matter, and all of those things gave me variations right up front, which is kind of what I wanted. And so to enhance, and then basically that gives me the opportunity to just enhance what's there and cut out what I don't want or what I think is masking, one of the other guitar parts. Unfortunately, here we don't appear to be getting a whole lot of masking. We're getting some, and Mika's quite correct. Some time alignment would do it. But this was really, to me, the point of this show was what I would do with EQ to separate the guitars out, and doing that in mono. That's what I wanted to demonstrate. Yes, time align could have been something I could have done. I don't have time aligning plugins. I don't own them. So I can't use a tool that I don't have. So that is something I have to ignore. Now, if I was doing this on a console with a tape machine, you can't really time align. So you have to get creative. And so you have to get a little bit creative with EQ. So there you go. I hope I've not labored the point too terribly much. Yeah, Bobby, you were quite right. There was a little bit of distortion on the 4th guitar. I'm not quite sure what the story was with that. Let's see, what else do we have here? Goal is to present 4 guitars, not necessarily the same person. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Do we have any other questions? Because we are right at the end of the show now. Let's see. Ken says, people denying the existence of robots may in fact be robots themselves. You know what? You have just given my secret away. There you go. But yeah, they are pretty good guitar takes. Absolutely. Considering that they are direct in and, no amps were involved, no microphones were involved. Because a lot of you guys working out of your basement studios or your bedroom studios, you might not really have the option to be able to record that way. The only option you have really is because, you're in an apartment block or you have neighbors that you need to be considerate towards. You can't really wail your guitar without, getting the police being called for breaching the peace. So your option is to plug straight into your interface. So you're going to if that's your situation, you're going to have to get creative with things like Ampere or Guitar Rig or something like that to shape your guitar tone. And really, if you want to treat those kind of things realistically, you want to record as if you're recording with an amp, then use an amp sim by all means, but put the amp sim over here. Put the amp sim on the inputs here. So if your guitar is plugged into input left or input right, then put your Ampere or your Guitar Rig on here, shape your tone by doing some test recordings and see what they sound like. And then once you've decided upon how you want the guitar to sound in the context of everything else that's already recorded, and you're happy with it, then hit record and you will print that guitar tone to the track. And then all you will need to do when it comes to mix time is just a little smattering of EQ and maybe just a hair of compression just to kind of tame the transients just a little bit. And that's it. That's all you need to do to mix your guitars, because you've shaped the tone with the amp sim on the input stage. You can, as I say, you can do things after the fact. You can put the amp over here on the inserts and then transform that to rendered audio. That's another way to do it. But really, personally, if you've got the idea that you're going to treat an amp sim like a real amp, put it on the input stage and do it that way. That way you are committing to the sound straight away. Okay, what else do we have? Just Bob says, from my end, it's about the tones and difference of playing to achieve a good mix. I play 4 parts slightly different and how to place them in the mix. Yeah, and that's kind of what we're after. And what I was trying to do. What I was trying to do was show just a little bit of how I would separate these 4 guitars out, which didn't need a whole lot of separating, to be honest, because there were 4 different guitars and 4 different takes. And there were mistakes in one, or there was a slight change in rhythm in the other, and that means that you get that kind of variation. Now, if they were wildly different, this might be slightly different, but you know, we were aiming for vague consistency here, which is what Bob delivered with 4 different guitars. So, mission accomplished, I think. I showed you a little bit of complementary EQ. And I showed you that I start from the top down. I start with the bass, and then I go to my individual channels, and I work from there. So really, all we did on the main bus here was scoop out low end overall and give it a little bit of a sheen at the top. And then we took care of some surgical EQ on the 4 different guitars here. So this is what you get in the real world when you don't have access to a Steve Lukather, a Steve Vai, or a John Mayer, or a Frank Gambale, or an Alan Holdsworth, or a Josh Mika, or anybody like that, or a Tim Rose, or a Mark Lettieri, or any of those great guitar players. If you don't have access to them, and it's just you, or it's your mate, or it's someone else you know who has sent you the guitar tracks, this is real world mixing, folks. How are you going to make those guitars sound fantastic? EQ and compression, by and largely. And you're going to have to work your butt off a little bit to make it happen. But, you know, fundamentally, try and get it right at the source as much as you possibly can. Music to Motion says, when listening in mono, would moving the pans back to the center make those tracks louder in the mix? Probably. I don't know, actually. I don't think it would have any effect. You know, if I put this back into mono, and we have a listen to just the guitars. Okay, and then let's zero out the pans as well. Okay. Okay, no, it makes no difference at all. Makes no difference, and the reason why it doesn't make any difference is because these are not cloned tracks. They are individual takes. So you don't get that kind of cumulative volume effect, which I think is what you were alluding to. Bob says, great show, thank you for doing it. You're welcome. So if you want to be like Bob and you want to recommend a subject for next week's show, then please email me, just like Bob did, at Jonny Lipsham Studios, and I'm talking to the camera, but you can't see me. So email Jonny at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk if you want to be like just Bob and, have a subject for that we can devote, 80% of the show to. If that's you, if that's something that you're interested in, then send me emails. Even if I have like half a dozen, even if I have like 6 or 7 or 8 subjects, that's 6, 7, 8 subjects that we can do over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I think that'd be really great, because I'd be able to cover big questions, broad questions, subjects that you guys are interested in. So please do that if you're interested. And other than that, at this point, I'm going to say good night. Good night.